Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. Thank you for stopping by. I hope everybody's doing well. Well, here it is. It's already October and I don't know where the year went. It seems like it just kind of flashed by. And I have this urgency to go out into the wilderness and get some hiking in. And I think it's because I know the leaves are going to be falling really soon. They're already starting to fall and they're already actually starting to turn. So I want to go out and get some hiking in and maybe do some photography and some videography. And I actually love autumn colors. I really do. I love it when the leaves turn. I think it's so pretty, especially here in Virginia. Our autumns are really beautiful here. So anyway, I have two choices. Either I stay home and make jewelry or go out hiking. And lately I've been staying home and making a lot of jewelry. I'm trying to catch up with all the boxes that I received when I had a cast on, and I'm slowly getting through them little by little. But anyway, guys, having me sit here and talk to you isn't helping at all. So let's get started with a tutorial. But before we start, let me remind you to please subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so, because it really does help my channel and it helps me as a content creator to stay motivated to create more videos for you. And also don't forget that I always leave a list of all the materials down below in the description section of this video, along with a list of all the tools that I'm going to be using. And to make it easy for you to navigate through the video, I always leave timestamps as well, so you can skip forward to any portion of the video. So anyway, guys, we're going to be making that gorgeous necklace that you saw in the introduction, and I made it with the beads from Sam's Bead Box for the month of September. The name of the box is Forest Walk. Now, if you don't have the beads, obviously your necklace will turn out different. As you know, I always leave a list of all the materials down below, and I always leave the details of each of the beads. So you could possibly go to the internet and try to find them yourself, or go to Sam's Bead Shop and see if he still has those beads or something similar. And I consider today's design to be more like intermediate. I wouldn't call it beginner, but I do encourage you, if you're a beginner, to please try it, because I'm going to be giving you some really good instruction. So even if it doesn't turn out exactly the same, it still might turn out pretty and it might be okay. But anyway, the necklace has gorgeous botanical beads. It has the beautiful bumblebee focal and it has leaves. So if you like nature themed necklaces, you're going to love today's design. So anyway, guys, I'm very anxious to show you how to make today's necklace. So let's go ahead, turn the camera around and we'll get started. And here we have Sam's Bead Box for the month of September. As you can see, the name of the box is Forest Walk. Let's go ahead and select the beads. As you can see, there are tons of beads here, but I did put the ones that we're going to be using at the top. Now, what inspired the necklace was this beautiful bee focal. Let me show you. When I first saw this bead, I knew I had to use it. As you can see, it has a bee design. It measures 17 by 21 millimeters, and the color is garnet with a copper wash. I absolutely love this focal. It's so beautiful. The other beads that I really wanted to use were these. These are called Czech glass melon barrel beads, and the color is olive bronze. And I just thought this color was beautiful, guys. I really love the green, and I love the beautiful copper wash in the recesses. These are so pretty. And there was actually another item that I really love, these beautiful bicones. What I liked about these bicones is the beautiful green color. The glass is clear, but it has little speckles throughout. And the color is green luster. They measure 8 millimeters in size. So we're going to be using a bunch of these. One of the things I like about Sam's Bead Box is that they always give you small beads, and so I thought we would use these Druck rounds. These are 4 millimeters in size, and the color is amber topaz. And to tie the whole thing in, I thought we would use some of these beautiful leaves. The color is Jungle Glow Mix. As you can see, they measure 13 by 17.5 millimeters, and we're actually going to be using this amber colored leaf. We're not going to use the green ones. There were so many things in this box, guys. I love these as well. These are so pretty. As you can see, they're Czech glass coin beads, and they have a dragonfly design on the surface. The dragonfly has a beautiful copper finish, and the color of this bead is Red Silk Picasso. And that's it from this box. I'm going to be using some craft wire Now this wire is by Beadsmith, but you can use any brand. We're going to use 2 gauges. We're going to use 22 gauge and 24 gauge, and both of these are in a copper color, as you can see. I'm going to be using some 7-strand beading wire, and this is by Beadalon, and it's in a gold color, as you can see. And the reason I'm using 7-strand is because I want the drape to be a little bit stiffer. I don't necessarily want it to be very supple for this design. Plus the beads are kind of heavy, so that's another reason why I'm using this 7-strand. And this one is 0.018 of an inch or 0.46 millimeters thick. As you can see, it tells you what kind of crimp beads to use. And I'm actually going to be using the crimp tube size 2. And here it is. As you can see, it's size 2. And these are in a copper color. I'm going to be using some crimp tube covers. As you can see, I have various colors here. I'm actually going to use the copper color for where the clasp is going to go. Now these are magical crimping pliers, and I know not everybody has these. You really don't need to use these, guys, but I'm going to be using these because the lower portion of the necklace is going to be attached with a crimp tube that I don't want to put a cover on. I just want to make a little bead out of it, and this tool helps you to make a little bead out of the crimp tube. As you can see, there's a little well in there, so when you squeeze it, it squeezes the crimp tube and it forms a little bead. But like I said, you don't have to use these. You can simply crimp your crimp tube the way you normally do with crimping pliers. We're going to start by assembling the focal components, and we're going to be using these beads for that. And like I said, we're going to be using 2 different gauges. For these top beads, I'm going to use the 22 gauge, and for these bottom beads, I'm going to use the 24 gauge. And the reason I'm going to be using a thinner gauge for these leaves is because of 2 reasons. One, the bead itself is pretty thin, and also the type of wrap that I'm going to be making is going to require a thinner gauge. It just looks better with thinner gauge wire. Another thing I wanted to point out, guys, the veining is actually only on one side of the bead. I don't know if you guys can see that. You can see the veining from both sides, but this side is actually smooth, and the veining is actually on this side of the bead. So when you go to assemble yours, you want to make sure you pay attention to that. So let's go ahead and cut some 24 gauge wire for the leaves. I'm going to cut myself 3 3-inch pieces. So let's go ahead and get started. You're going to take your wire and you're going to thread it through the leaf like this. Bring it all the way to the middle. And now you're going to bend it upward like this so that the wires cross. And you want to keep bending it. So that it looks like this. And now using some pliers, you're going to take this piece and you're going to bend it so that it's pointing straight up. Like this. Let me go ahead and straighten it. And now this one is going to be bent this way. Let me go ahead and straighten it as well. So this is what you should have, something like this. And now I'm going to grab the loop that we just formed right to the left of where the wires cross like this. I'm going to take this bottom tail and I'm going to wrap it around a couple of times like this. Cut off the excess. If you see anything sharp, tuck it in. And this is what you should have. And now I'm going to grab the wire at the top of where the wraps are and kink it. And with some round nose pliers, I'm going to place the pliers right where the kink is, like this. Take the tail, wrap it around the nose of your pliers, like this. Flip the pliers around. I always like to turn it a little bit this way so that the loop is closer to the wraps. And now you want to take this tail and wrap it towards the back, like this. Remove the pliers. And now we're going to form some wraps, and you can go right over those wraps that you just created because you're really not going to notice anything since the wire is very thin. So let me go ahead and grab this loop. And by the way, these are crimping pliers, but I like to use them to grab the loops because they grab really well and the tips are very skinny. So now I'm going to grab this tail and I'm going to form a couple of wraps right on top of the ones that I just created. Just like that. And now I'm going to cut off the excess. And if you see a little tail, you definitely want to tuck it in. You want to make sure that there's nothing sharp sticking out. You may need to straighten out your loop. but this is what you should have. So there's one done. And now I'm going to go ahead and speed up the film and do these two. As you can see, I finished all 3 leaves. I did make this loop a little bit bigger because I want this to hang a little bit lower. And the other thing you want to make sure you do, guys, is you want to make sure the loop is sitting parallel to your mat. And if it's not, it's very easy to do. You simply take some pliers and turn your loop so that it's oriented properly. So now that we've completed the leaves, we're going to go ahead and attach the top beads. And for that, we'll be using some 22 gauge wire. So once again, I'm going to cut myself 3 3-inch pieces. And I'm saying 3 inches for those of you who are beginners. If you're advanced, you might be able to get away with less. I normally don't forget this step, but it's a good idea to straighten your wire out before you cut it from the spool, guys. But as you can see, it's never too late. You can always do it later. It's just not as efficient. And it doesn't have to be perfectly straight either, okay? So let me go ahead and show you how to do this bead. We're simply going to thread the wire through the bead like this, bring it to the center, and now using some round nose pliers, you're going to grab the wire at the top of the bead and kink it. You can remove the bead at this point. And now you're going to place your round nose pliers right where the kink is. And you don't want the loop to be real big. It's up to you how big you want it. I'm going to place my wire right here, but your pliers might be different, so you may need to place yours somewhere else on your pliers. Like I said, it depends on how big you want the loop. So now I'm taking the tail and I'm wrapping it around the nose of my pliers like this. Flip my pliers around. Continue to wrap that tail to the back like this. Remove the pliers. And now we're going to form a wrap. So once again, I'm going to grab the loop with my skinny pliers. And I'm going to grab the tail with some other pliers and do a couple of wraps. You can do as many wraps as you want to. It's completely up to you. And now I'm going to cut off the excess. And now tuck in the little end. So this is what you should have. And now let's thread on the bead. We're going to form a loop at this end now. So once again, I'm going to grab the wire at the top of the bead. Line up the bottom loop. Kink the wire. Switch to this portion of the pliers. Take the tail and wrap it around your pliers. Flip the pliers around and continue to wrap to the back. Remove the pliers. Now before we make some wraps here, we have to attach one of these leaves. So I'm going to go ahead and attach it. I'm going to slide the closed loop into the open loop like this. And once you've done that, now we can do some wraps here. So I'm going to grab this loop like this, grab the tail, and I'm doing a couple of wraps. Cut off the excess. And if you see anything sharp sticking out, tuck it in. So this is what you should have. Now when we go to thread this onto the necklace, we want to make sure the veining is on the front. So it's going to have to sit like this. Okay, that's important. So now I'm going to do the exact same thing to these 2 beads. So let me go ahead and speed up the film. Okay, I'm done. As you can see, I've completed all 3 components. So let me go over this one more time. The loops on the leaves have to be parallel or horizontal, and the loops on these 3 Czech beads have to be vertical. And the reason they have to be oriented like that is because we're going to be threading them onto beading wire along with the other beads. And now we're going to build 2 other smaller components. You're going to need 2 bicones, and you're going to need 2 2.5-inch pieces of 20 gauge wire. And it's the same thing, guys. We're simply going to kink the wire, like this, form a loop, wrap it around to the back, grab the loop with some skinny pliers, grab the tail, and do a couple of wraps, cut off the excess, tuck the little tail in, thread a bead on, grab the wire at the top of the bead, line up the bottom loop, kink the wire, form a loop, remove the pliers, grab the loop with some skinny pliers, grab the tail and do a couple of wraps. Snip off the excess, tuck in the little end, and you do want to make sure your loops are lined up. So there's one, and now I'm going to do the same thing with this one. So here are my two bicones. So let me go ahead and get the other beads. We're going to work on the main portion of the necklace first. Now before I thread anything on, I like to play around with my patterns, and I've already played around with this a little bit, so I kind of know what I'm doing. But to help me out, what I do is I use these rods. These are my magic rods. I carry them on my Etsy store, and these come in really handy because it allows me to lay out my bead patterns, and I can hold them in place with these stoppers. And what I do is I bring these stoppers in so that the beads are up against each other, and it allows me to get accurate measurements. But if you don't have these, guys, just use a scrap piece of beading wire. That's what I used to do before I came up with the magic rods. The nice thing about the magic rods is that they're reusable because they're made out of steel. And I basically put them in my pencil holder so they're easy to find. But anyway, like I said, I do carry them in my Etsy store, and I'll leave a link down below. So let me show you what I had in mind. Like I said, I've played around with these beads a little bit, so I kind of know what I'm doing. But I was thinking about starting out with 4 of these spacer beads, like this, and then one of these melon beads, and then one of these spacer beads, and one of these focals. So I'm simply going to thread it through like this, and then another spacer bead. So that's how it's going to sit on the necklace. I think that looks really nice. And now another melon bead, another spacer bead, and the main focal now, and another spacer bead. So this is what we have so far. And now another melon bead, another spacer bead, the other focal, a spacer bead, melon bead, and another spacer bead. Let's see what we have so far. That looks really cute. And I'm going to finish with 4 of these spacer beads. Let me put my stopper on, and I'm going to bring the beads in close. So this is what we have. Let me put it down. I really like how that looks. Obviously it doesn't have to drape, but it gives me some idea of what the focal section is going to look like. Let me go ahead and put some bicone beads down, because what I want to do is put a bicone bead at the end. Let me secure it with a stopper, and I'll put one at this end. These stoppers do wear out after time, guys. I'm just telling you, they do wear out. That's why I always enclose a whole packet of them so that you have plenty to work with. Let me move these beads to the side, and we'll put this down and take a look. So that's what we have so far, and I think it looks adorable. So now what I'm going to do is load these 2 rods, and each one is going to be for the strands of the necklace leading up to the clasp. So let me go ahead and speed up the film and I'll meet you back. As you can see, I've loaded 2 more rods. Each one is about 6 inches long. And the nice thing about the rods is that I can pick up the beads really quickly. But like I said, guys, you don't have to do it like this. You can just use beading wire. I just find that picking up beads with beading wire is a little bit more tedious. It takes a little bit longer. I seem to be able to pick them up quicker with the rods, and then it's really easy to offload them from the rods to the beading wire. And that's what we're going to do next. First, we're going to cut some wire for the lower portion, and this piece is about 10 inches long. I have a crimp tube here, and I have my magical crimping pliers. Let's go ahead and load the crimp tube. Take the tail, thread it back through the crimp tube, and bring it down to shorten that loop. You don't want a very big loop because this is actually going to be visible, and that's one of the reasons I chose gold wire. You definitely want to make sure that your beading wire isn't crossed in there. I know it's difficult to see because it's hidden, but do the best you can. And now I'm going to place the crimp tube right inside that little well there. I don't know if you guys can see that. Just place it right in the middle like this, and then squeeze it. And this is what you should have. And now we're going to turn it sideways, place it back inside the well, and squeeze it again. And I'm just going to keep turning it and squeezing until I get a little round bead. You just want to make sure you keep it centered inside that well. And this is what you should end up with. Pretty cute. Let me give you a close-up. I think it's a great alternative to having crimp tube covers. And now we're going to come in here real close and cut off the excess beading wire. And this is what you should have. For the main portion of the necklace, obviously you're going to need a longer piece of wire, and it's a good idea to cut yourself whatever length you need for your necklace plus 2 inches at each end to crimp it off. So for example, if your necklace is 18 inches long, you'll need a piece that's 22 inches long, and I do recommend that you cut a little bit extra if you can afford it, because crimping is not easy, guys, and I've made plenty of mistakes and had to start all over again. So I always cut myself a little extra. I'm going to place a clip at the end. You can use a bead stopper if you want to. Let me just move everything up so I don't get confused. I am going to need these 2 bicones. So I'm going to go ahead and start at the top of the necklace. Let me move these up. To offload the beads is very easy. You simply hold on to this end, take the stopper off this end very carefully, and then offload the beads in multiples. And take your beading wire and load it directly onto your beading wire, just like that. That's one of the nice things about the rods. It holds the beads in perfect alignment, so that it's easy to offload and thread them onto the beading wire. So I'm just going to keep loading these beads. As you can see, I've loaded the beads, and this is going to be the strand like I said before, and this is the top of the strand where the clasp is going to go. And now we're going to work on the focal section of the necklace. So let me go ahead and put these beads here. And like I said, guys, I've been playing around with these beads, so I kind of know what I'm doing. It took me a while to figure it out. It wasn't easy, but I just kept rearranging the beads until I got just the right amount of beads to form the upper and lower portion of the focal section. So let me show you how we're going to do this. I'm going to go ahead and offload this bicone at the end. And now I'm going to load it onto my beading wire like this. And now we're going to take the shorter piece, and we're going to thread the beading wire through the loop like this and bring it down. So this is what you should have. So now that we threaded this shorter piece of wire, we're going to continue loading these beads. Let me move it up a little bit. We do need to attach these 2, and I should have probably done it before, but I'm going to put them here so that I don't forget. And now I'm going to offload these 4 beads at the end and load them onto my beading wire like this. And now I'm going to thread one of these bicones like this. And I'm going to continue to load the rest of these beads until I get to the final melon bead at this end. Okay, as you can see, I've loaded the rest of the beads and components, and here's my last melon bead. And now I'm going to thread on the other bicone. So now that we have that on, we're going to continue threading the rest of these beads, the 4 spacer beads. I'm not going to thread this final bicone because now we need to build the lower section of the necklace. So I'm going to attach a clip to this end so I don't lose my beads. Let me move this up. We're going to need some more spacer beads. And we're going to need the rest of the melon beads. And here's my short end. So now I'm going to load 4 of these spacer beads. And guys, it took me a while to come up with this, okay? I didn't just make it up in my head right now. It was a lot of trial and error. So if you're making something like this, it may take a while before you get just the right amount of beads. It takes time to figure it out. So now I'm sliding them down, as you can see. And here's where you get to figure out whether or not you need to add another bead or not. I think I'm going to be okay with 4 beads here. I don't think I need any more. So now I'm going to take the tail and thread it through this bicone component, like that. And now I'm going to load another 2 spacer beads. Bring them down. And now a melon bead. And another 2 spacer beads. Let me just snug up the beads a little bit so you can see what we're doing. I know it's a little difficult to see, but hopefully you can get an idea. So now that we've loaded these 2 spacer beads, we're going to go through this beaded component. So we're going to take the end and thread it through the loop like this. And now let's load another 2 spacer beads. Another melon bead. Two spacer beads. Let me just move it up a little bit so you can get a better view. So now we're ready to go through this component like this. And that looks pretty good and it's sitting properly from what I can see. But let me continue threading the rest of these. So now we're going to thread 2 spacer beads, another melon bead, another 2 spacer beads, now we're going to go through this component. It's looking pretty good so far. Let me go ahead and finish up. I'm loading 2 more spacer beads. The other melon bead. 2 more spacer beads. I'm going to go through the bicone now. And it's looking really nice so far. And just like before, we're going to add 4 more of these spacer beads and we'll finish with a loop. Let me go ahead and do that. So there's my 4 spacer beads. Here's a crimp tube and here are my magical crimping pliers. This end's going to be a little bit more challenging because we have the beads now, so it's going to be a little bit more difficult. But anyway, here's my crimp tube, and now I'm going to take the tail and go through the crimp tube, pull it through, shorten my loop up, make sure there are no spaces. So there's my loop, and I want to make sure that it's the same size as the other one, and it looks like it is. It's a little awkward, but try to separate your beading wire. And now let's go ahead and crimp it. You want to go all the way around slowly until you get a nice round shape. It's not perfect, but it'll have to do. Let me go ahead and cut off the excess. So now that we have this loop formed, we have to thread the main piece of wire through it. So let me go ahead and remove the clip. And now I'm going to thread the wire through the loop, pull it through. Let me just bring everything down and take another look. And that looks pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. So now we're going to continue threading beads. I have this one bicone and this strand to thread. So let me go ahead and speed up the film and I'll meet you back. Okay, as you can see, I've threaded all the beads on. So now before I attach the clasp, I'm going to take this to the mirror and hold it up to my chest to make sure that it's the right length, and I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back, and I did end up removing a few beads from the top, but you know, sometimes that happens. It all depends on the design of the necklace. And even though I like 18 inches, this one sits pretty low on my chest, so I felt like I needed to shorten it a little bit. So anyway, now we're going to finish the top of the necklace. Here are my 2 crimp tubes. Here are some crimp tube covers. Here's a lobster claw clasp and 2 6mm jump rings. And we're going to go ahead and finish one of the ends. I almost forgot to add the wire guardian. I like to use wire guardians because I think it gives the beading wire a little bit of protection. So now we're going to thread on a crimp tube. And now we're going to take the tail and thread it through the wire guardian like this. And now we're going to go down the other end of the wire guardian like this. Bring it down. Take the tail and thread it through the crimp tube and bring that down. You want to make sure your beading wire sits properly inside that wire guardian. I like to close the legs a little bit, like this. Now before you crimp down, you want to make sure, like I said before, that your beading wire isn't crossed inside that crimp tube. It's very difficult to see. If you hold your beading wire like this, you'll have better luck. So now we're going to use crimping pliers, and we're going to place the crimp tube inside the first notch, which creates the U shape. Like that. Turn it on its side. And now I'm going to use one of the 3 notches. I'm going to place it inside the middle notch, just like that, and squeeze, and that should follow the crimp tube. And I always go to the smaller notch to tighten it up a little bit. So this is what you should have. Let me cut off the excess beading wire. Slide on a crimp tube cover like this. To close up the crimp tube cover, I use these pliers. And you want to go all the way around until it closes and until you get a nice round shape. So that looks pretty good. And now I'm going to slide my beads all the way down. Make sure there are no spaces anywhere. So just like before, we're going to thread on a crimp tube. And now a wire guardian. Take the tail and thread it through the crimp tube. Bring everything down. Shorten your loop so it sits nicely inside the wire guardian. And that looks pretty good, but before I crimp down, I want to make sure that I don't have any spaces anywhere. And just like before, I'm going to place the crimp tube in the first notch. Tighten everything up before you crimp down. Turn it on its side, and then switch to the tip and tighten up the crimp tube. Snip off the excess, slide on a crimp tube cover, and close it up. I like to take my time when I do this because it's very easy to dent the crimp tube cover if you're not careful. And that looks pretty good. So now we just have to attach the clasp, and I'm opening up my jump ring. Attach the clasp. Close up your jump ring. And on this side we just have a jump ring. I know this was not a super easy necklace to make, but the finished product is really beautiful. But I think what I like the most about this necklace are the colors. I think the green and the amber together looks so beautiful. And of course the splash of red makes it even more gorgeous. And as always, I want to go ahead and put it on and show you what it looks like. So let me go ahead and do that, and I'll be right back. Well, what do you think? Do you like this necklace? Isn't it gorgeous? I love the botanical theme. I really do. But I can also see making this necklace with other beads. For example, you could do a celestial theme with stars and the moon. So instead of having the little leaves dangling down, you could have little stars dangling down. That would be nice as well. But anyway, guys, as you saw in the tutorial, it takes a lot of trial and error to get just the right amount of beads to have this kind of design. So if you have different kinds of beads, it may take you a while to figure it out, but I know you can do it. Just keep trying until you get the right combination of beads, and you should be fine. So anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed today's tutorial. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm looking forward to seeing you again. Have a great day, and I'll see you next time. Bye.